Since it's such a special occasion, they're asking for a speech in French. But honestly, expecting someone who only graduated from high school to give a speech in French is ridiculous, right? My sister-in-law, who always belittles my education and job, made an unreasonable request. I can't just let myself be laughed at like this. I'll celebrate the marriage with the best speech and play along with my sister-in-law to the fullest. I'm Marissa. Currently 32 years old, mainly handling customer service at a restaurant. I've been working here for a long time, about 15 years or so. That's because I started working at this restaurant shortly after dropping out of high school. I used to be a female student at a local private high school, but when I was in my second year of high school, my father's business went downhill, and we couldn't afford the tuition anymore. I have an older brother, but he had already graduated from college and was working, so there was no need to worry about his tuition. However, for my parents, in addition to their daily expenses, the tuition and facility fees for the high school I attended were too much of a burden. I knew very well that I wasn't as smart as my brother. After considering that staying in high school while receiving high tuition wouldn't benefit myself or my family, I chose to drop out. If it ever became necessary to attend school again in the future, I persuaded my family by pointing out that there are plenty of options such as certification exams or correspondence high schools. I conveyed that dropping out was my own decision and focused on helping with the household finances through part-time work after leaving school. Fortunately, from there, the business gradually recovered, and by the time I was in my mid-20s, I succeeded in surpassing the previous sales figures. I didn't regret the decision to drop out because it was unavoidable, and I gained experiences that are not easily obtained. One day, after finishing work, I received a call from my brother.
Hey, long time no see. How are you, Marissa? Big brother. I'm doing well. What's up with the sudden call?
Unlike me, my brother has always been good at studying, so he went on to Stanford University for further research. He has been dedicated to his studies as much as his passion and time allowed, but occasionally, his lack of communication with people becomes a problem due to focusing too much on academics. Although I sometimes become his conversation partner, there hadn't been any calls or emails from him recently, so I was happy to receive his contact after a long time. Well, actually, I'm seeing someone now.
My big brother's dating. What's she like? I want to meet her.
Upon hearing that, I could hear my brother's joyful voice from the other end of the phone.
Really? That's great. Of course, I'll introduce her properly to our family and relatives, but before that, I wanted you to meet her first.
Why me? Shouldn't it be Dad first? With that response, my brother said somewhat embarrassedly. Actually, it's my first time dating someone and introducing them to my family, so I'm nervous about meeting them, and I wanted to practice beforehand.
If that's the case, I understand. Tell her that I'm looking forward to meeting her too.
My brother has always been the type to handle studies and work smoothly, and it seems he has been relied on from various quarters. However, when it comes to romance, he's completely clueless. Even for me, his family member, it's the first time hearing about my brother's love life. But come to think of it, my brother is almost 40 years old now, so it's not strange at all if he's dating someone with marriage in mind. She already knows about you and said she wants to meet you. How about next Sunday?
It's my day off. Looks like the day has finally come for my big brother. Now I'm getting nervous too.
On the promised day, I was at the cafe for the meeting. Today, I'll be meeting my brother and his girlfriend, but considering they've been dating with marriage in mind, she could be considered his fiancée. 5 minutes before the meeting time, my brother entered the shop with the woman. I couldn't help but be surprised when I saw the woman my brother brought. She was incredibly beautiful, beyond what I could have imagined for someone who seemed to have no love interests before. Her nails were beautifully manicured, her shoes showed off her elegant foot shape, and her dress exuded sophistication. From head to toe, she was meticulously fashionable, and her belongings seemed to reflect her sense of style and urban chicness.
Nice to meet you. I'm Marissa, Brat's sister.
Nice to meet you too. I've heard about you. I'm glad to meet you today. I had hoped we could get along since we finally met, but it seemed like I was the only one thinking that.
I'm really happy as Brat's sister to know he's dating such a beautiful woman like you. Working hard in the city is so cool.
Oh, thank you. It's nice of you to say that. Well, I guess from your perspective as a part-timer, it might seem cool. During our conversation, I couldn't help but feel that she had a somewhat condescending tone, or something that rubbed me the wrong way. Throughout the conversation, she interjected remarks that seemed to belittle my education and occupation. "You dropped out of high school?" Well, people have their reasons, but personally, I don't think I could have a conversation with someone who couldn't even graduate high school. "Working at a restaurant or bar, huh?" Well, I guess for that job, you don't need education or intelligence, just taking orders from customers. Sure, I dropped out of high school, but I have no regrets and I take pride in my work. I thought about retorting several times to her rude remarks. However, being slighted a bit doesn't give me the right to spoil the atmosphere here. Above all, my brother seems happy, and he doesn't seem to notice her snide comments at all. Onlai does have a strong personality. But that's what makes her cute, you know? Perhaps in front of my brother, she appears to be an intellectual and beautiful woman with just a slightly assertive side. If it were me, I might hesitate to associate with someone who seems to have such double standards and changes their behavior based on people's backgrounds, like their education. But in reality, it's my brother who's dating her with marriage in mind, and if he seems happy, I'll turn a blind eye. That day, we exchanged contact information with her and parted ways from my brother and her, but I suddenly felt exhausted. A few weeks later, I received a personal message from my brother's wife. After that, Brad and I submitted our marriage registration and became a married couple. "I'm contacting you about our wedding party. I'd like to serve dishes made by the bride when we have the wedding ceremony in Hawaii 2 months later. If you have any good ideas, I'd appreciate it." In the photo attached to the email, she stood next to my brother holding the marriage registration, and I felt conflicted about the idea of that snide woman becoming my sister-in-law. But it's not good to bring up personal feelings, so I decided to switch gears. All I can do is help make the wedding wonderful by coming up with ideas for the food. Once I decided on that, I immediately contacted my brother's wife. "If you're okay with me helping out, I have a few ideas in mind. I'll send you the recipes and photos of the samples right away. Let me know if you need anything adjusted." However, after that, I didn't receive any further communication from my brother's wife, but the lack of communication likely means they've already decided from the options I proposed earlier. I had already received the wedding party invitations from my brother. With the wedding ceremony in Hawaii coming up, there will be several days when I can't be at the restaurant, so as a token of apology, I scheduled shifts for myself as much as possible while I can still work. The travel expenses were accumulating smoothly, and I was planning to gradually prepare for the trip to Hawaii, which was 2 weeks before the wedding ceremony. Then suddenly, my sister-in-law contacted me. "I don't think the recipes you came up with before are suitable for serving to our guests. Please reconsider." 2 weeks before the wedding ceremony, at this timing, I have to come up with recipes from scratch and make trial dishes again? Moreover, I have no idea what my sister-in-law wants to serve or what level of cooking she expects, so I don't know what to suggest. I apologize for not being able to propose something satisfactory. It would be helpful if you could tell me the image of what you want to serve and the frequency of cooking you usually do, Angie. How about it? The image of what I want to serve? Isn't that something you should think about? And as for the frequency of cooking, that's none of your business. Unlike you, I'm busy with work, so figure it out somehow. Even though we're both busy with work, I think it's important to align our ideas, but it seems my sister-in-law doesn't think so. While busy with work, I've been trying to come up with recipes, but all my proposals have been rejected every time. How about this one? It requires fewer ingredients, so it's economical. What a tasteless design. Just like you.
Then, how about this recipe? The key is to use colorful ingredients to make it look vibrant.
I'm the main focus of the wedding, you know? I don't have time to make something so elaborate. Rejected after coming up with ideas, reconsidering, and receiving late-night calls became a daily routine, and I reached the peak of sleep deprivation and exhaustion. However, my sister-in-law doesn't seem to feel sorry for me at all. On the contrary, she seems to think it's only natural for me to keep proposing recipes and urges me relentlessly day and night. "Sorry, I have work early tomorrow morning, so can I send the rest of the proposals tomorrow evening?" Work? It's just a part-time job, isn't it? Can't you fulfill the request from your sister-in-law right away? While I do want to listen to my sister-in-law's requests as much as possible and make my brother's wedding wonderful, I also have a life and work. I've explained many times that it's honestly difficult for me to dedicate all my time to my sister-in-law's recipe making, but she doesn't seem to listen. I'll be home at 11 p.m. tonight, and I have an early shift tomorrow morning. It's difficult for me to make new trial dishes today.
Your job is just some simple task that anyone can do, right? Unlike you, I work at the company during the day, and I have a mountain of things to do. Don't compare yourself, who can have free time anytime, with me.
At this point, I'm not a kind-hearted person to the extent that I would still want to come up with recipes for my sister-in-law from the bottom of my heart. I'm only taking on the task because it's my policy not to abandon something once I've accepted it, especially for my brother's once-in-a-lifetime special occasion. The approval from my sister-in-law came in the early hours of the morning, just 4 days before the wedding. It was a very tight schedule, and it took quite a bit of time to express the inspiration that couldn't be put into words by my sister-in-law, but I think I managed to create something satisfactory. I hurriedly sent the data and called online.
Online, how about this recipe I just sent by email? It looks glamorous, but each step is simple, so it shouldn't take much time to make. It should surely stand out against the blue sea of Hawaii.
This is the best option, I guess. It'll do. What nerve do you have to keep me up until this hour? It was because of Angley's insistence on finishing it by this morning that we had been communicating until this hour. Despite adjusting my schedule to accommodate Angley's and staying up all night to come up with the recipe, why am I being scolded over the phone? Sorry. The wedding is approaching, and you mentioned that you wanted it done by this morning.
But I'm glad it's done on time.
What's with that attitude? Blaming it on me?
You, who can adjust your time and work at any time, should be fitting your schedule to mine as a regular employee. That's why I dislike uneducated part-time workers like you who lack common sense.
I'm not saying she should be grateful, but it was Onlai who asked me to come up with a satisfactory recipe to fit her unreasonable schedule. I took on this task thinking it was for the sake of Onlai, and being tossed around and then criticized with snide remarks is simply uncalled for. However, I decided not to say anything about the issue with my brother's wife's recipe to avoid causing any further strain in our relationship. Finally, the day of my brother's wedding arrived. My mother had already passed away, and my father couldn't leave Japan due to his responsibilities for taking care of our elderly relatives, so he couldn't attend the wedding. At the venue, there were not only staff and interpreters but also friends of my brother and Angie, as well as what seemed to be members of her family, already seated. While eagerly searching for my seat, an incident occurred that dampened my excited mood. My name wasn't printed on the guest list, and no seat had been prepared for me. I explained the situation to a nearby staff member, showed them the invitation, and they promptly arranged a seat for me, but it still didn't sit well with me. As I sat in the seat provided and watched the ceremony, suddenly, a spotlight illuminated me. Bewildered by the situation, I opened my eyes to see Angie, holding a microphone, approaching me. Since you're here, why not give a speech? Let's convey this happiness to the Hawaiian gods and ask for their blessings on our marriage. So, please give a speech in French. If only she had consulted me beforehand. I hadn't prepared anything for a speech. As I panicked, Angie, who had switched off the microphone beside me, whispered in my ear.
Even if you've only worked simple jobs for high school dropout, giving a speech in French in front of nearly 100 guests would be impossible for you. It'd be the pinnacle of embarrassment.
Upon hearing those words, I realized that Angie wants me to embarrass myself by stumbling through a speech in front of a large crowd. I understood her intentions, and if that was the case, I had no choice but to give it my all in the speech. So she would regret making me present a speech in French. Taking the microphone from Angie, I began my speech in French. Starting with words of blessing for my brother and Angie's marriage, I recounted the disrespectful remarks made to me since our first meeting, the incessant communication despite claiming it was for wedding consultation, and the mocking comments about my part-time job and education. Interjecting slang here and there, I delivered the speech in a humorous manner. Meanwhile, my brother and Angie were whispering to each other while listening to the speech.
Hold up, when did she learn to speak French? And with Angie, I had no idea about any of this. Unbelievable. What do you mean by that? Well, I've been getting along well with my cute sister-in-law. Hey, Angie, are you serious about that?
Because I'm the type who never gives up easily, I turned the disrespectful remarks and unbelievable incidents from Angie into laughter in my speech. My brother, who hadn't noticed Angie's rude remarks and unbelievable behavior towards me for a long time, looked incredulous. Meanwhile, Angie continued to smile throughout, seemingly oblivious to everything. Of course, she couldn't understand any French at all, to the extent that she needed an interpreter for even simple exchanges. It's truly ridiculous to see my sister-in-law, Angie, in the midst of attendees who understand French, using smartphone translation apps or other means, yet she continues to smile politely without understanding a word. Has there ever been such a lively atmosphere during a wedding speech before? After finishing my speech, my brother seemed to be confirming something with Angie, but halfway through their conversation, she started approaching me aggressively.
I just heard from Brat. Don't you know there are good and bad things to say in a speech? Are you trying to ruin my wedding? It was you who asked for a French speech, right? And as for the good and bad things to say, I'll return those exact words right back to you.
Perhaps she didn't expect me to counter, as she looked dumbfounded.
What's with speaking French when you're just a high school dropout? High school dropouts can't speak French in the first place. While it's true that I am a high school dropout, it's incorrect to assume that high school dropouts can't speak French. I studied to be able to speak it.
I studied French alongside my job, as it's sometimes necessary for work. I never imagined it would come in handy in a situation like this.
Are you going to ruin my wedding by speaking in French after ruining our fateful encounter?
I apologize if the speech didn't meet your expectations. I don't recall ever ruining your fateful encounter. What exactly do you mean by ruining our fateful encounter? My inquiry seemed to amuse Angie greatly, as her face turned red and she started trembling.
Seriously? Don't you remember?
Unfortunately, I'm juggling multiple jobs at bars, restaurants, and other part-time gigs, so I don't remember every customer's face. My words seemed to have struck a nerve with Angie, as she started muttering to herself with frustration.
We were dating, and things were going well between us. But after talking to you for a bit at that bar, he said he lost confidence in his feelings for me. Because of something you said to him.
Well, I might have said something like that before, but if your relationship could be broken by just one comment, then maybe it wasn't that strong to begin with, don't you think? Angie then glared at me with an intense expression and approached with a resentful tone.
If things had kept going, maybe he would have proposed to me since my birthday was coming up. So, it's just your speculation that he would have proposed? Besides, the middle of my brother's wedding isn't the appropriate place to discuss lingering feelings for an ex.
My brother, who had been listening to this exchange, seemed to realize Angie's true feelings.
So, it means you don't actually like me, and you still have feelings for your ex that you can't let go of? Am I just second best? Second best? Don't make me laugh. I was supposed to marry a handsome, highly educated, high-income man. You're not just about education and income. It's a compromise. For me, it's a chance to turn my life around and marry into wealth as soon as possible.
My brother, who had no prior romantic experience and finally found someone he liked, realized that Angie only saw his education and income, and that their marriage was a selfish compromise.
Did you lie when you said you liked the real me? Did you actually believe that? Liking your education and income is enough for me. Is there a problem?
My brother couldn't have imagined he would hear Angie's unexpected true feelings during the wedding ceremony. Marriage isn't something to rush into, but my brother had previously mentioned wanting to marry someone he genuinely loves and who loves him back. Brat, you always said you wanted to marry someone you were mutually in love with. I can't believe things turned out like this. I can't believe it either. I wish this were just a bad dream. The despair of realizing that the person you finally fell for, whom you thought loved you back, only approached you for your money and education, is indescribable. As I was pondering these thoughts, I heard shouting. Wondering what was happening, I looked around and saw that it was coming from my brother's childhood friend, who was holding a smartphone. Upon looking at the phone, I saw that our father was on the screen. When I asked my brother's childhood friend, they explained that our father couldn't leave Japan but wanted to see the wedding in real time. So, they had been connected via video call from the beginning, and it seemed that our father was furious as his anger was evident through the screen.
Isn't that Dad? Why? Wait, did he see everything just now?
Dad really wanted to see the wedding, so he asked this person. He seems really angry about all this commotion.
Whoa, this is bad. Was he recording the whole time? Is he blaming me for everything?
Previously, Dad had called me to express his joy about my relationship with the woman I was dating, praising her manners and saying how wonderful she was. However, it's understandable that he would be furious now after witnessing her embarrassing behavior at the wedding, which revealed her true nature.
Sorry, Dad. You paid for this wedding, and we had your blessings. It must have been a shock for you to find out what kind of person she really is.
Dad was the happiest knowing that you were going to marry someone wonderful. He probably didn't expect the woman to turn out like this. In the end, Dad told us to think carefully about our future and ended the video call. With the unexpected confession from my brother's wife and the surprising video call from Dad, the wedding, which had turned into a funeral-like atmosphere, ended abruptly and awkwardly. Watching the guests leave with forced smiles, I couldn't help but wonder if this was really for the best. However, it's up to my brother to decide, judging from his wife's behavior. After returning home, it seems that they caused quite a stir. My brother, who had hoped to marry someone he truly loved and who loved him back, now desires a divorce after feeling betrayed in the most unexpected way. On the other hand, Angie, unwilling to let go of my brother, who is highly educated and well-off, refuses to divorce him at any cost.
You think you can just divorce me after we've been married once? I'm over 30, just got married and quit my job for a wealthy marriage. I won't accept being divorced just like that. You didn't marry me because you loved me, did you? If you want, you can go back to your ex. I'm not your wallet.
Angie demanded compensation, citing the emotional distress caused by the embarrassment at the wedding and the one-sided divorce from my brother.
The guilt of wasting the best years of a woman's life is heavy. You need to do something about my emotional distress.
Indeed, guilt is heavy. Perhaps it's time for you to reflect on your own guilt. I've looked into a lot of things about you. Digging one's own grave, indeed. It all started when my brother's wife raised a fuss for compensation, which led to the revelation that she had been meeting her ex even after marriage. Furthermore, her misdeeds continued to unravel one after another. It was disclosed that she had been using the family's savings to meet her ex, and as a result, my brother ended up demanding compensation from her.
Is this true? I've been deceived, but I don't want a divorce. You don't want a divorce because you're after my earnings, right? It's clear that you only wanted the title of being married.
Although my brother's wife reluctantly agreed to the divorce, her downfall from there was beyond belief. She had boasted about resigning from her job after marriage, but she had already quit her job. Moreover, due to her continuous financial support for her ex, she had no savings and was struggling to make ends meet. She was working tirelessly day and night to pay off the compensation demanded by my brother. Furthermore, when the video of the wedding mishaps, which someone had recorded, was uploaded to a video-sharing site, my brother's wife became an infamous figure online. With titles like Chaotic Wedding and Bride Who Can't Speak a Word of English but Just Smiles, she received harsh treatment online. I once saw her wandering aimlessly in the streets. She was wearing the same bag and clothes as when we first met, but the radiance she had back then was nowhere to be found. With worn-out skin, a emaciated body, and deep wrinkles, she looked nothing like the beauty she once was. It seemed like she noticed me too and hurriedly approached me.
Everything's ruined because of you. My job, my marriage, everything's gone to hell. If I had just married him, I'd be fine by now. Take responsibility for ruining everything. But aren't these all consequences of your own actions? It's not something I can fix.
I never expected to be accused by my ex-sister-in-law in the middle of the street, especially when I was about to meet someone. Realizing that there was no point in continuing the conversation, I decided to quickly escape. Fortunately, my current boyfriend was waiting for me at the meeting place. My ex-sister-in-law, who was momentarily intimidated by the sight of a tall foreign man, quickly left as if fleeing, and I was relieved that nothing untoward happened. The person I am currently dating is French. We met at the bar where I work part-time, bonded over our shared hobbies, and after confirming our mutual interest, we decided to start dating. By the way, I am grateful to him for helping me improve my French skills to the point where I can handle unexpected French speeches. Afterward, my boyfriend and I successfully tied the knot. We submitted our marriage registration and officially became husband and wife. Instead of judging solely based on titles or backgrounds like my ex-sister-in-law, we took the time to communicate and understand each other's inner selves before getting married. Currently, we are living in US due to our work commitments, but we are prepared for the possibility of moving to France in the future, so I continue to study French. Despite the challenges we faced, I am truly happy to be living with someone I genuinely love. Being honest with my feelings and sharing love in this relationship brings me the utmost happiness.